Looking at the facial muscles and the muscles on your head and neck, let me ask you, which muscle helps to move only one eyelid?
Your orbicularis or
Did you hear me well?
Something.
Not something, there's no muscle called something. Is there a muscle for an eyelid alone?
Is it the lateral anguli?
It's here, that's here. That's here. Levator palpebrae, okay? Can you move your lower eyelid like you can move your upper eyelid? You can try. Can you move it? Only you blink your upper eyelid, right? So the levator palpebrae, okay? So if you look at the orbicularis oculi, what is the insertion? What is the insertion for levator palpebrae? What's the difference? Look at the insertion, both eyelids for the orbicularis oculi. So if you have to close your eyes, you need to use the orbicularis oculi versus the other one. Okay, and the origin for the orbicularis oculi, without having to look in the book, where is the muscle?
Around the eyelid.
You need to give me the complete information. It's a circular muscle, okay? Lacrimal, frontal, what else? Maxilla. Okay.
Is that the levator palpebrae? Is that on the drawing or I don't
It's in the list. It's in the list.
But it's not on the model?
Yeah, it is.
It is?
It's on the left side. No, that's your levator labial. That's your lips. That's at the eyes.
Well, if it's not there, it's right above your eyelid. You can mark it. I'm just going with the table. I asked you to go through the table. I hope you did that. And I did explain all these muscles in the last class, by the way, what each name means. So it's not there means you should at least make an effort. That's what I was hoping you would have done and come. What about the frontalis? What does it do?
Wrinkle your forehead.
So, wrinkle the forehead, raises the eyebrows, so where should it insert? Insert.
No.
If you are giving me answer without thinking, I am going to cancel the class myself. You are not thinking. You know it, but you want to just rush. If it is inserting into the eyebrows, how can it, if it's moving this part, how can it insert there? Origin is there, right?
That's your insertion with your eyebrow.
Yeah. Whatever the below the skin, it inserts right there. So for the insertion, at least I expect you to know the main part. If not, sometimes there are more than one, but the one that is more relevant and more that you can retain and remember. And I don't want, at least eyebrows is good enough. If you can do that, I'll be more than happy. I'll sleep well after your test. Okay. So the origin is Gallia paneurotica. What about the occipitalis? Think. Retracts the scalp. So where is the insertion? Where is the origin? Which one is the insertion? Huh? It's the reverse of frontalis. It's the reverse. Okay, opposite. So the insertion now is the Gallia paneurotica. Yeah. So for the occipital origin is your temporal bone. Then let's look at nasalis. It's right there on the bridge of the nose. Okay. So what does it do? It helps with what? Well, it makes, it's on the nasal septum. It doesn't make the nasal septum, but this muscle does what?
Helps like you to blow your nose, like contract.
Well, open, close your nostrils.
Yeah.
Okay, if something smells good or bad. Okay, so it inserts into the bridge of the nose and the cartilages, and it originates from the maxilla, close to the nose. What about Orbicularis oris?
What about it?
What about it? Yeah, let's talk about everything.
That's origin.
What does it do? Let's always go for the action first.
Compresses.
Compresses the lips.
Yeah. So it moves both the lips, because there are other muscles to move the individual lips, raise or lower, or the corner of the mouth. Okay. So it moves both the lips, and so it inserts into the lips, okay, beneath the lips. And what about the origin? It's a circular muscle, so it touches two bones,
Maxilla and mandible.
maxilla and mandible. Okay. So if you miss out on these muscles, you'll have negative points, okay, because it's right there. It's not like some of the muscles deep inside your body, which is much harder. Then you have a muscle to raise your upper lip, lower your lower lip. What do you call those muscles?
Levante, labii.
Levator labia superioris, to raise your upper lip.
Depressor labialis inferior.
Yeah, depressor labia inferioris. Depressing means you're pulling it down, so it has to be inferior. And labia means lips, and obviously the insertion will be the upper lip or the lower lip. So for the muscle that depresses, the only bone here, the origin has to be the mandible. So that's how we have to learn. Then it is not memorization, at least partially. Then if you look at the anguli oris, those are the angle of your mouth, okay, both corners. So one is the levator anguli oris, the other one is the depressor anguli oris. They insert into the muscles of your angle of the mouth. And depending on the muscle, they originate either from the maxilla or the mandible, depending on whether it's up or down. What about mentalis? What does it do?
It helps lower the jaw. It helps bring your jaw down.
Yeah, it elevates actually and protrudes lower lip and moves the chin when you make certain expressions. So it inserts into the chin, and its origin is the mandible. What about the buccinator right here? More or less like Orbicularis oris.
Compresses your cheeks.
Compresses the cheeks, okay? So the origin has to be the two bones right there, maxilla and mandible, right? Insertion, cheek and lips. At least the cheek relates to the compression of the cheek, so you can relate that information. Then let's look at the muscles on the next page. These are the muscles that work with the tongue. So what does it tell you that these muscles operate your tongue? Which word?
Glossy.
Glosses. If your tongue has a glossy appearance, you can relate that to these names. Depending on the origin insertion, where they are found, you have various names. Styloglossus, coming from the styloid process to the tongue. You have hyoglossus, coming from the originating from the hyoid bone. Okay, so if you know your orientation, hyoid bone is below, so this muscle is below the tongue. inferior to the tongue, right? So only the other two are a little harder, the mylohyoid and the genioglossus. So both of them originate in the mandible. So they all insert into the tongue, but from different directions. Then there are more muscles that help you with chewing. If you turn over the page, we know the temporalis and the masseter. Besides the buccinator, temporalis, masseter, both muscles insert into the mandible to raise your mandible, but they originate in different locations. Where does the masseter originate? Zygomatic arch. It starts from here. The other one starts from here, the temporalis, from the temporal bone. And there are two muscles more inside. We call them pterygoid muscles, the medial and lateral pterygoid muscles. What kind of movement they do? You have the masseter and temporalis to elevate your mandible. What else do we do when you eat?
Open.
Just do this. No, you have to do this too. So that's why the name medial lateral comes from lateral or medial movement of your mandible. Incursion, excursion. Some of the muscles that are more obvious compared to the others, I do expect to know the origin, insertion. And some of the muscles, at least you should know the orientation of what they do. And some muscles have in the name itself where they are found. Then you have some muscles on the neck besides your sternocleidomastoid, which is the obvious one. The other muscles get the name hyoid because they're all in one way or other related to the hyoid bone, either passing over or attached to the hyoid bone. So you have stylohyoid, mylohyoid, sternohyoid, homohyoid, thyrohyoid, and sternothyroid. So at least 4 names tell you exactly what they are, where they are found, where they attach. Let's go to the muscles for respiration. 1013, figure 1013. Besides the diaphragm is the major muscle that helps you to breathe. There are other muscles found between the ribs. What do you call that region between the ribs? Intercostal. So these muscles are also called intercostal muscles. You have both external and internal intercostal muscles. So they expand the thoracic cavity. Your diaphragm pulls the thoracic, the rib cage down, and these pull them laterally, so the cavity expands, so air can go in, lungs expand, the pressure goes down. Let's look at the abdominal muscles. What are the 4 major abdominal muscles?
External, internal, rectus abdominis.
Rectus abdominis, the middle, based on the straight fibers, we call it rectus, based on location, abdominis. And the other 2 on the side of your abdominal region, the lower portion, those are your external and internal abdominal oblique. And then there is one that's very deep, the most deep muscle. Which one is that?
Transverse
Transverse abdominis. What is the function for all these muscles?
Compress.
Compress the abdomen. But there is an additional function for rectus abdominis.
Compresses the ribs.
But it flexes the vertebral column.
Column, yeah.
Which muscles help you to flex your neck?
Sternum,
which muscle?
Mastoid.
Yeah.
Which one?
Or sternocleidomastoid.
Sternocleidomastoid, the right and left both. So
Right.
depending whether you are flexing forward or to one side, you use both or either one. So depending on how it is worded, you need to pay attention, okay?
Yeah.
Don't use both your muscles all the time unless you say yes. Okay? So if you're sleeping, you're using one in the class. Okay. So what muscle extends your neck? Because the same muscle doesn't do everything. So what muscle do you have right there?
The trapezius.
Trapezius, thank you. Let's move on to the muscles of the arm. I'll leave other tiny muscles alone for now. What's the muscle on your chest?
Pectoralis.
Pectoralis major,
Major.
minor is beneath that, below that, right? Connecting to the ribs, the upper ribs. But the pectoralis major, if you can visualize the orientation, which are the bones they touch? Which ones are the origin, which one is the insertion? Move the muscle and see. If you move your pectoralis major, what are you trying to do?
Oh, for your
The
femur.
humerus in your scalp.
You are doing what?
Your
You can do this, do
adducting.
this, do this.
You're adducting.
Adducting your humerus, for example, okay? So where is it inserting? Bone,
The humerus.
humerus. Which are the bones that it's touching? Those are the origin for this muscle. Clavicle and sternum, because it's like this, right? What about the deltoid?
Shoulder.
Adducting your humerus.
Abducting, it moves it away, right? I mean, there are more functions for every muscle, but something that you can relate directly. So if this muscle contracts, you are going to pull it up like this, right? So where would it insert? In this one you can be more specific if you know. Yeah, tuberosity is where muscles attach, right? And the origin, it comes from the scapula, also clavicle, but at least scapula I can relate easily. Okay, let's go to the pronator supinator, figure 1026. How many pronators are there?
2.
2 and 1 supinator. Which bone do all these muscles insert, all 3 of them?
Humerus. The
Um,
radius.
radius.
Radius. They originate from the humerus, maybe, depending on the muscle, but they all insert into the radius at 3 positions. 1 here, 1 in the middle, 1 on the top, near the head. Okay? So the one that inserts here comes from the ulna, if you see the picture. On this hand, it will be like this. Okay? Origin insertion, that's Pronator Quadratus. And the one that inserts into the middle of the shaft of the radius, that comes from where? The other side. So what do we have here on the bone?
The medial epicondyle.
Medial epicondyle, right? So both pronate. The supinator comes from the origin lateral epicondyle to the head of the radius. So it does the other way around, the supination. Then you have the flexors and extensors for your carpal region and the digits. So right in the middle of your forearm, on one side you have the palmaris longus, the same position on the other side you have what? Extensor digitorum. Then you have your flexor muscles on both sides and the extensors on the same region but on the other side, depending on whether you are flexing or extending or carpal region. Okay, so these flexors, based on the orientation, we call them what? Flexor carpi radialis or ulnaris, or if it's the extensors, it's the other side. They do attach to specific carpal bones, metacarpal bones, so we will just call them carpal metacarpal bones for convenience. Okay, but it's good if you can figure out more specifically. But I'm just talking about your test. And then there is a sheet of connective tissue above the carpal bones. What do you call that? No, those are the fine retinaculum. Those are the fine sheets that go inside your digits. And the one that covers the palm, palmar aponeurosis. Like here, you call it aponeurotica. That's aponeurosis. Then if you see besides the flexor carpi radialis palmaris longus, you have beneath that flexor digitorum superficialis, then you have flexor digitorum profundus. So what do these muscles do? Because when you move your digits, you are moving this much. But what about all these movements? So these muscles move the individual phalanges further down. Okay, and there's one that's working on the thumb alone. If you see the word pollicis, I told you in the last class, pollicis refers to the thumb, like flexor pollicis longus. That if this is your standard anatomical position, that flexes your thumb alone. And you will see also some muscles like extensor digiti minimi. Digiti minimi refers to your little finger. Okay, minimi, small digit, that's your smallest one. Okay, so to extend your little finger, you have a separate muscle. So all these muscles, the name itself tells you: abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis longus, extensor indicis. Indicis is for your index finger alone. So to extend your index finger, you need this muscle. So it inserts into that particular phalanx. So for example, the pollicis muscles attached to your phalanx number 1, depending on the muscle, either the proximal or distal, each one of them. Then you have some muscles to do opposition. You know what opposition is, like touching your fingers with the thumb. So if you see on page 357, 58, you see some muscles that have the name opponents. So the name tells you they do the opposition. So if you see the opponents digital minimi, so it flexes in a way you can move the little finger to touch the tip of the thumb. So it says opponents digital minimi. There are even more tiny muscles, but we are not going to go over that, like the interosseous muscles and the limbricals. They are for finer movements between the digits and the phalanges. But just know that they do exist. You can work on them for your own. Let's look at the muscles on the leg, lower leg, the adductor muscles. How many adductor muscles are there that start with that name? 3 of them. Adductor longus, brevis, and magnus. So obviously they adduct the leg, not the hip, the leg, the thigh especially. So where do they attach? Which bone? Obviously femur. And you can see they're all coming from the os coxa, but more specifically from the different parts of the pubis ischium. But let's just call it os coxa. But of course there are specific regions on the os coxa where they originate from. And for the hip joint, try to know what muscles you find in the hip joint on the anterior, posterior side. What are the muscles that we have on the anterior side?
The psoas major,
Psoas major,
the iliac,
you have the ilium, so iliacus,
and
and on the posterior side there are quite a few.
the gluteus medius,
Gluteus, maximus, medius, minimus. Which one is more the deepest of the 3?
the minius,
Minimus. Yeah, and what else we have inferior to that? Piriformis. There are 2 obturator muscles in the lab. You may have seen one. One is externus, internus, obturator, external, internus. And 2 muscles attached to that, the gemellus muscles, one above and below the obturator muscles. And let's look at the thigh muscles, the front and the back. What do we have on the anterior side of the thigh?
the rectus brachius,
Quadriceps group including
the rectus
rectus femoris.
femoris,
Rectus femoris, think of the fibers and the bone, rectus femoris, and the 3 vastus muscles which are medialis, lateralis, and intermedius. So just think, okay, so where should these muscles, what are we doing with these muscles? If you are not sure, you can move and see what you're doing. Extending the knee. So where should it insert?
the patella,
Yeah, more than that.
the tibia,
Patella alone means you are only moving that thing. You have to move your tibia, right?
Tibia.
So what is the structure on the head of the tibia where this can attach? Tibial tuberosity. Ischium is in the back. That's for those muscles in the back. See, we have to think right. Okay. So if you see all of these flex, the extend the knee, and if you see the insertion, it says patella and tibial tuberosity, and also the condyles on either side of the tibia. But the origin, it varies. Okay, most of them come from the femur, except the rectus femoris that comes from the ilium. So when you learn, you can always learn something that's common and then what is the exception. So if these muscles are coming from here to here, right, you said it's inserting into the tibia. So the possible bones here are your os coxa and the femur. You have the trochanters and all, so that's where they originate, on the head of the femur. Then coming to hamstring muscles, what are the muscles? Biceps femoris, tendinosus, membranosus. Okay, so these 3 muscles, they are found in a certain orientation on your thigh, from medial to lateral. So which one is the most medial?
the semi-membranosus.
Membranosus. Which one is the most lateral?
The
Biceps femoris. So that way you won't mix up these muscles, whether it's for the lecture or for the lab. So always the biceps femoris is the lateral muscle, whichever leg. So naturally these muscles also attach to, what are we doing with these muscles? We're doing the opposite of what we did just now. Flexing the knee. Okay, so it has to again insert to the tibia on the posterior side, right? And they originate from ischial tuberosity. Now, because now you can think of the ischium, it's in the back of the os also, right? There are two more muscles that help with flexing the knee. They are long muscles like these three.
The serratus.
Adductor, yeah, that itself tells you it's not flexing, it's adductor. Sartorius and gracilis. Okay, so there are 5 muscles that are primarily involved in flexion. Then what about the muscles on the lower leg? Which muscle is involved in dorsiflexion?
Tibial anterior.
Tibialis anterior. Which one is involved in plantar flexion? Gastrocnemius, and also there is a muscle called soleus below that. Both do the same thing, right below the gastrocnemius. Gastrocnemius has 2 heads, a medial and lateral head on either side. And then if you look at the orientation, whether you find the tibialis attached in the front or back, then you call it tibialis anterior or tibialis posterior. And then you have 2 muscles that attach to the fibula, Fibularis longus and brevis. And you have an extensor digitorum also for the toes. And there is one that's specific for the big toe, which is your hallucis. You see a muscle extensor hallucis, longus, that goes only to the big toe. So if you say hallucis refers to the big toe, so which phalanx will that insert into? Number 1, because the numbering starts with 1, right? What's the name of the tendon that attaches the gastrocnemius to your bones on your foot? Calcaneal tendon that attaches, inserts into the calcaneus. So the gastrocnemius originates on your femur, inserts into the calcaneus. Then if you see the very last set of muscles, the intrinsic muscles of the foot, 1042, again you have abductors, adductors for the different toes. Hallucis refers to the big toe, and digiti minimi refers to the little toe, and everything else is for the other toes. And depending on the action, they call it by different names. So for these muscles that are very deep inside, at least know the names, because it's pretty obvious and the action, but the origin insertion, you don't have to worry about that for these muscles. For my test, but you need to know them one way or other. So I did not tell you which muscle you should read, but the way I discussed today, you should get some idea, in the sense like all I did was I tried to help you how you should have done it between last class and now. So if you didn't do it, you know how to relate some of this information, how to learn. Based on the orientation, where you find it, what are we trying to do, then where should we be inserting and all of that. Okay. So there are some muscles that should be more obvious than the others. But again, you have one more week. You can still continue working on this. So this is going to be only part of your test, not the whole test. So don't say I spent 6 hours on that. And what about the rest? Atlas B is for you. Okay. If you can understand Atlas B, then you are in good shape in this class at this point. If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but I'm not going to test you on that. You remember Atlas A, we did that? That was for a reason. We were initiating, we were starting, so I wanted to emphasize on that. But Atlas B is nothing but a review of what all we did so far based on the orientation, the cavities, the region, the bones, the muscles, where you can find them in the body without opening the body. Okay, I can tell this is my location of the flexor carpi realis, things like that. So I strongly suggest you to do that, not for the test, but if you are serious about the programs you are planning to do. It's a very good review. And then when we come back, we are going to work on the muscle tissue, how the muscle cell, individual muscle fiber, how it looks inside, what are the structures we need, how the muscle moves, and some of the related information that will be in chapter 11 between Tuesday and Thursday. And next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, we'll test on chapters 9, 10, and 11. 10 and 11, 9 we did, right? 10 and 11. If somebody wants to get an early start, I have some videos on my homepage, or go to YouTube and type muscle action. Then you'll get some nice animations that explain your muscle cell structure. So you can do that before.
You sent us some.
Yeah, but if you find that not good enough, you can still keep looking. You can always find, by a question of time, how much you search. Always you keep finding something better and better, the way they explain. Okay? That's all I have for you.